Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, our weekly in-depth analysis on the current news and affairs with our commentator and economist, Mr. Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm your host, Namsrat Sindh. You can join in on our conversation on MNB World Facebook page and on Twitter via Jargal_Defacto. So let's take a look at our top stories for today. Results of the Prime Minister's visit to Russian Federation. Possibilities of implementing Digital Mongolia program. Is it right to privatize National Sports Stadium? Now let's take a look at our first topic. The delegation of Mongolian high-ranking officials and representatives from the private sectors led by Prime Minister Khurelsukh paid an official visit to Russian Federation. Private sectors and the public have high hopes for the future cooperation and joint economic projects between the two countries as a result of this visit. So our first question about this one is, what was so special about this official visit?
Well, as you said, it's official visit after 9 years. 2010, that time Prime Minister Bolt was visiting Russia with this official visit. So why after 9 years? Probably things are changing, and plus we had with Russia a agreement last year during the visit of President Putin to Mongolia. We are now strategic comprehensive partnership countries, and on one side. On the other side, of course, from this kind of visit, partnership, you would expect very much close, high volume economic cooperation. And that was the intention of the visit, to develop further bilateral economic relations between two countries. And other thing interesting was, well, we'll talk about the pipeline through Mongolia separately, but the other thing was Mongolian government had signed agreement with the Eurasian Economic Commission for 2 years, work plan for next 2 years. And I think it was good because before, as we invited to this commission, where it's customs union actually of Belarus, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, I understand Armenia is there too, and so we are there. If we are there, there will be substantial impact on the way how small and medium enterprise run in the country, because it's already causing some problems in some small, medium businesses in the member countries. So it is good that we have 2 years plan of work before we consider any status in that organization. And also I was waiting for them to discuss, Long talked about the $100 billion rubles, a loan from Russia to develop or to reconstruct power station number 3 and 4, which there was not a subject of conversation there. Other thing was railway, joint venture with Russia, but they have not completed any agreement. Originally, we were waiting them both sides to increase their the capital, on equity capital, for $250 million, which I haven't seen that they have completed. They were planning. Just most importantly, the bilateral trade relations, trade between two countries is just less than $2 billion. At the time when with the China, Russia, they are coming to the level of $200 billion. So it's really negligible, small. And plus, out of this $1.7 billion, 1.4 is for only Mongolia buying gasoline and oil from Russia, which may be changed in 5 years as Mongolia will complete on a refinery with the development finance of India. So it may completely change the relationship, trade, at least current business economic relations structure between two countries.
So number of documents were signed during this visit. So did they, make any substantial economic agreement between the two countries?
Well, except this pipeline, I think they all, more or less, many of them were just memorandum of understanding, a dozen of them. And I would expect next time, for example, during such a high-ranking visit, more contracts signed than the memorandum of understanding. Maybe it is a lack of maybe preparation time due to many reasons, but every time I think now Mongolian government, Mongolian business to pay attention to make sure that we sign a contract, small final deal, so that we prepare well before this high-level visit. So I think this is again some some lessons we keep learning for quite some time.
So will this transit gas pipeline through Mongolia project be made in any time soon?
That's the main issue. First time our Prime Minister went to Moscow meet Medvedev, the Prime Minister of Russia, and to Sochi to meet President Putin, and he went to St. Petersburg and come back and back from Moscow altogether. Yes, President Putin said now we have not need any more political decisions because we will do this pipeline. Now it's a matter of having feasibility study properly now, which kind of started conversation already. Working groups were working before the visit, and of course it's political decisions. But however, just if you take bigger picture, according to the Japan Times, for example, Russia owns 20% of the national gas reserve of the world and 17% of the natural gas producer in the world and the largest exporter of natural gas. And this 20% of export earning of Russia coming from the gas they supply through Ukraine to Europe. And now they have a new pipeline connected, and it's an interesting chance that during the visit, the long talked more than 15 years, two pipeline got together, connected, and Russia and Chinese presidents were talking on a telebridge. They have been celebrating the opening of that gas pipeline, which will coming about 2,200 kilometers from Russia all the way to Blagoveshchensk border with China, and it's the largest contract Russia ever made. It's a $400 billion contract for 30 years to supply annually from 2025 for next 25 years, 38 billion cubic meter gas to China. Of course, China gas demand is keep increasing, and Japanese saying that not only China is becoming only receiving the Russian gas, with further supply and further need of Russia to supply gas, replacing possible risk due to sanctions, etc., due to sanctions of the North Pipeline Stream, etc. Russia is more interested to go to China to different path. Now they talked long to put the third pipeline through Altai in between Kazakhstan and Mongolia through the 60 kilometers wide narrow border, but because it's very expensive, and plus it comes to in Chinese side to Xinjiang, which is way far from the final consumers. Mongolia is the closest directions through Mongolia is close directions to Beijing, and finally I think finally they have agreed upon that. And a good thing is now they will start feasibility study of that pipeline.
So how will this transit gas pipeline, contribute to the development of Mongolia? Maybe in economic side.
I made some estimation based on Ukraine transit gas transit money, how much they receive. Turned out Ukraine, Ukraine has more border with. Longer pipeline, 1,240 kilometers long pipeline through its territory, and the capacity of 160 billion cubic meter per year. And now they are getting as a fee around $4 billion a year, which is endangered because if the North 2 pipeline will be developed, then Ukraine will lose their income. So by all means, Ukraine and other Western countries, Western Europe and America are putting sanction on that northern stream. So based on that estimation, Mongolia, the railway, as we now talked with Russia, is Now it's about 1,060 kilometers through the territory of Mongolia. That's along with the railway line, current railway line, which is 1,060 kilometers, and that directions make all the construction of the pipeline much cheaper, because they will bring pipes on the train and they put just next to the railway that pipe. So the estimation is there will be 2 years or so feasibility study and 4 years or so construction. So within 6-7 years, China will be receiving at our border with China the pipeline. So, but now issue is now China has to agree. China has to put their pipelines ready to receive. China and Russia to agree the price, which, for example, in case of power of Siberia, took 10 years just to agree the price. So hopefully after certain times, these two countries, sender and receiver, will agree the price. We will be receiving just a fee for transit, which can be in the form of money, in the form of in the oil, the gas that will maybe replace down the road our some power stations, some household consumption. So just based on the Ukraine price and etc., if 1,060 kilometers pipeline goes through Mongolia, estimate there will be a minimum, well, I say also maximum there will be 30 billion cubic meter gas a year through Mongolia, unlike 38, which is the power of Siberia. If this gas goes through Mongolia, of course, it's one price at the northern border, and after certain transport, the other price in the south border. So in between them, and that whole thing is to pay transit fee for Mongolia. I estimate it is to be around $300 million a year as minimum, based on the other estimation of gas pipeline transit fee. So that will be substantial economic contribution to Mongolia, because probably we should not invest into the project. We can make it as a contractor some part of the work, but the investment is to be agreed with between China and Russia, and we just get paid for just using our territory for the gas. So for today, Mongolia is 15 billion US dollar economy, and for this $300 million US dollar a year is a good substantial income.
So since the gas pipeline is being built along the railroad, we will have the infrastructure for this, right? Will Ulaanbaatar city have the infrastructure for using gas?
Yeah, because it goes so far.
So this means that we can stop using fossil fuel if this project is implemented.
Well, fossil fuel, both of that origin, but gas is more cleaner than a coal, and of course, I don't know the technicality of power station. I don't know 500, 600 megawatt is to be replaced by gas. There should be certain costs, which I don't know, but certainly it will be a good contribution towards having better air
cleaner
quality
energy source,
and of course economy of power.
Okay, so let's get into our second topic. The government is developing a long-term development policy 2050 draft, and a Digital Mongolia forum was organized to discuss about the government's policies on digital development. So our first question about this topic is, how do you see the Digital Mongolia program?
Well, it's a quite important program, and I'm afraid we are very little late. We talk a lot and do little. Why? Because according to there is a World Digital Competitiveness Report, which includes 63 countries, and according to 2019 report, out of the 63 countries by 51 indexes, Mongolia is taking 62nd place, just before Venezuela, which is in the war and turmoil. So a question is coming, how come Mongolia is being not that much digitalized? The question is, if the rest people are sitting in the car and driving, should we stay here? No, we will go by our horse? No. we should be along with these people, and we should. We have, for example, some services, government services. Just take one example, interesting example I saw. There is for car taxes, you can pay online, but out of 400 drivers in the city, only 24
pays the
there was 2,400 or so. A very, very negligible interest of amount of people have paid it online. And as well as now, a lot of young people to tend to consume the government services and other bank services online. Many people still use physically coming to the, to banks, to the utility companies, etc. So in many ways, we are way behind, in particular in compared with Estonia.
So President Batola criticized that 2.6 billion will be spent on making only one website. So about this related to this project. So is this true?
Well, I don't know particular what website he is talking about. It's quite expensive, of course. We need to know who is doing what kind of website, whether it is related to the decision making on spending of those money connected with the project itself, which unfortunately the case in Mongolia. Many big state tender development funds, this kind of public money is used by the politicians themselves and used for their companies related to them, connected with them, which making, of course, the country more corrupt and people have a less trust in the government. In Estonia, for example, there are 3,000 state services are available online, and they have for the last 17 years. Several elections are organized by mobile phone, as they have a e-signature, which really proves that you are you. I mean, nobody else. So how do they use it? I visited Estonia 2 times. I've met all related people who made it possible, and they have our ID chip, ID card we have. They have exactly the same size, the same thing, but the chip we have, they have inside that chip makes you possible to sign electronically. And if the final contract somewhere needs signature, they will put you the signature on your behalf. So there is a digital signature, and the telephone number is your identity number. And thanks to that, these kind of 3,000 public services you can receive in Estonia at home. And Estonia is a smaller country, one of the smaller countries than us in terms of people, 1.3 million Estonians are there, and their territory is less than our Silingaimak.
So could you tell us more about this e-government? What are the benefits if we implement this e-government and Digital Mongolia program?
This makes our life less problematic, less bureaucratic, less corrupt. All public services you can receive but there is one concern, so that in order to have your digital sign everything, you need to put every details, personal data. And now it's a security issue of your personal data. And in Estonia, it is solved in very peculiar way. I was just surprised. How smart is this? In Estonia, as me, as an individual, I can put into that. There is one big database in the country. You go inside and you know exactly, and you have a right by law to know exactly who is using your personal data, how many times, from which state agency, because only the state can use your personal data. So I can go there and see who is using this data, and right. I have a full right to ask why are you using this. You understand if traffic police checks that's normal, right? It's normal. But if particular organization, somebody, so that's the way how safe the personal data safety in the country. That's what I like. So with the digital, we are becoming more even secure in a way. If you don't lose, of course, personal data, otherwise your transaction is completely approved. Nobody cannot cheat, etc. So, on the other side, anyway, the world is becoming digital, and you be a part of it. You are already a part of it, but the only thing there will be certain requirements, which is, for example, the government policies to be consistent and non-stop, okay, and it should be transparent. What's happening in Mongolia is every 4 years, government is changing. The new government is completely neglecting what the previous government was doing. They start doing things from the beginning, from the scratch, which makes any project very expensive, and people at the end tired, don't believe. This kind of things Mongolia should do.
Okay. So what does it need to take for Mongolia to become to have an e-government like Estonia? What do we need to do?
Vision, consistency, transparency, and good governance. That government where the decision is not made by people who at the end somehow benefit from their public money, which a lot of things happening in this country. Half of the parliament members were taking small medium enterprise fund to their own accounts, which is coming at 3%, and many of them have used that for 30% through the non-banking financial sector. How could ever this happen in this country, for example? Now recently they have discovered also several parliament members are also taking money from labor support fund of the country, job support fund of the country, maybe right translation. And how come those people who are supposed to make our life better, only doing their life better? So this is an issue of quality of the government in this country.
Okay, so let's get into our third topic. Citizens Representative Hall of Ulaanbaatar City approved a list of legal entities and properties to be privatized in 2020 during their meeting on 2nd of December. The National Sports Stadium was included on the list. Currently, 49% of the stadium is owned by the Ulaanbaatar City Authority. So our first question is it right to privatize Ulaanbaatar City's properties, especially this National Sports Stadium?
Well, when you have this kind of non-transparent, not good government, properties are much better to be in the private hand because the people don't steal from their own property. So I prefer everything possible to be in private hand with the government quality currently we have. In Nordic countries, it can be different ways. But however, in this case of a stadium, this stadium for 10,000 people, made in 1953, 59, and privatized in 1993. And the Mr. Niam Dawa, who participated, and he owns now 51% anyway. Now 49%. Why they need to privatize it? Because Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar city needs at least 3 or 4 times larger stadium, which they are making on the territory of Yarmak on the way to the current airport. And that will take at least 4 years probably, because since next year they will receive state money. And this person who is willing to pay 20 billion tugriks per 49% of the stadium, which owns 12.7 hectare of prime land almost in the center of Ulaanbaatar city. And now the current market price per hectare of land is 1.6 billion tugrik, which makes total 20 billion tugriks of that stadium. Stadium itself and around there are 12.6. It's quite large land, but of course the citizens, in particular people living around, there's a lot of housing. They should know what kind of project will be there after, because it should not be easy for them to make another smaller stadium when the country have a bigger stadium. And this kind of entertainment, sport are much better to be in the private hand. And Mongolia government is not need to spend much money for Nadam. We spend billions of rubles every Nadam. We paid way so much money to this old stadium every year. So maybe it's much better in the private hand, as a private company will not only once use that huge stadium a year, they will use many other events. Maybe it will be good step towards having some international game, Asian games, etc. So we will have some, this kind of combination will be happening as a result of the privatization, selling an auction, at auction, the 49% of this company, which owns that big land.
If they are privatizing it, how should they make it? How should they do it?
Well, first of all, whether people like or not, he's legally owned it, 59%. He bought it in 1993, big privatization scheme, during which, people were buying, for example, factory, 60% of the factory, that time light industry, maybe shoes, maybe cloth producing. And they were buying it, they were destroying equipments. They were sending the whole equipments like scrap metal to China. So hopefully that tragedy will not happen with the further privatization of city property, including this stadium. Stadium is to be privatized, of course. First of all, this 51% owner, Mr. Nyondawa, owns full right to say yes or no, to buy at the initial price. If he will buy, it's one issue, but then I think if he doesn't buy at that price, it should be probably public open auction. And we have some law how to make auctions, and some people pay certain collateral before, and things will be going, I think, more or less right way. But things to be transparent, and those who is participating in auction should not be related with those who is making decisions, city authority, rural representative, which is always a case, unfortunately, in this country.
So does the city authority have the capacity to successfully privatize this stadium?
A good point. It depends on, this is new authority, in particular new mayorship, and I hope so far it looks like working well. But however, we still to know after that these decision makings are not related with those who were buying or who will buy this 49%. If it is the case, it should be annual, because we have a full legal right against corruption in that case.
So what other properties were listed on this list?
Not sure all of them, but the most interesting and most informative was this stadium case, and there are several. There was some schools, buildings, partially used, old schools used for other purposes, and there are many of them in Ulaanbaatar city, and all former kindergarten buildings were used for some completely other purpose than the children. So I think they start to sell this kind of properties as public properties as this year. Now we have a way larger city, way larger expenses, so they're increasing the tax revenue. But one thing we should say, that we should know always when we sell state property, public or city property, we should make sure that it should be more green, it should be more for public purposes in accordance with the environment around. I mean, we don't expect, for example, after 5 years, after a new stadium made and the old stadium, instead of them, we have some chemical factory in the middle of the city. So it is also to be a consent of the people around these objects of sales.
Okay, thank you for that. Unfortunately, that is all the time we had for today. Thank you for staying with us, and we will see you next week with more topics.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a nice evening. Goodbye.